Hey y'all, you know what time it is? Get into it. How's it going? I'm feeling much better after that most recent post. Ain't nobody about to steal my joy. There's nobody who's going to rain on my parade. Because I'm having a great day today. Shout out to Mr. Ambiance for creating a wonderful music and ambiance selection of Star Wars Return of the Jedi, which honestly, out of all 9 movies, is probably my favorite. Return of the Jedi is just great. That and Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3. The others need not apply. No, not to say that the others are bad necessarily. For me, Return of the Jedi was just great. So, here we are again with the Redwall series, and we are about to start book 2, or part 2, The Quest. And whose coffin do you think that is, huh? Who may be lying there? I hope everybody's been having a good day, because we're going to enjoy ourselves on this blustery day. You know what I really appreciated? Shout out to, it's the autumn equinox as of Wednesday, on my favorite day of the week, yesterday. And on that day, temperature dropped, summer is over, it is dead. So happy about it, because I have a new trench coat that I've been wanting to wear, but it's been too hot to wear. I got my old sweaters I could bust out, a couple of new ones. So yes, I'm chilling. For all of my people that love the heat, I feel sorry for you. But I can only speak for myself when I say that I love when it gets cold. It's so comforting. But without further ado, I will begin. Chapter 1. Matthias came awake slowly. He blinked, yawned, and stretched his body luxuriously. The sun was setting, turning the little stream into a flow of molten red and gold tinged with deep shadow. He lay calm, savoring the peace and quiet of the woodland summer evening. Reality struck him like a thunderbolt. He sprang to his feet, instantly forgetting the beauty that surrounded him, lying there snoring and sleeping like a lazy little idiot, and all the while Redwall Abbey and his friends were under attack. Furious with himself, Matthias strode off angrily into the darkening trees. He could find no words strong enough to express his self-contempt. It was not until he had blundered and crashed along his way for some time, wildly upbraiding himself, that he calmed down with the realization that he was well and truly lost. No tree, path, or landmark looked remotely familiar. He despaired of ever seeing Redwall again. Night closed in on the small mouse wandering alone in the depths of Mossflower Wood. Strange, imaginary shapes flitted about in the gloom. Eerie cries pierced the still air. Trees and bushes reached out their branches to catch and scratch like living things with claws. Trembling, Matthias took refuge in an old beech trunk that had once been riven by lightning. Gradually, he became critical of himself again. The great warrior, frightened of the dark like a baby church mouse. From somewhere overhead, he heard a scratching noise. Summoning all his courage, he banished his fears. Drawing Shadow's dagger, he stepped out into the open, called aloud in what he hoped was a gruff voice. "Who's doing all that scratching and scraping? Come out and show yourself if you're a friend. But if it's a rat out there, then you best start running. Otherwise, you'll have to deal with me, Matthias, a warrior of Redwall." Having spoken his piece, Matthias felt his confidence surge back. He stood tense and alert. However, he received no answer, saving the mocking echo of his own voice ringing back at him through the dark woodlands. Having spoken his... A slight noise at his back caused Matthias to wheel about with the dagger upraised. He found himself confronted by a baby red squirrel. It gazed up at him curiously, sucking noisily on its paw. Matthias practically dropped the dagger through laughing so much. So this was the nameless terror that stalked the night. So, you know, this little squirrel sucking his paws like sucking your thumb that you did as a kid. Comment below if you were one of those kids that used to suck your thumb. I don't think that was not a thing for me. That was... Actually, I'm not going to name the person who I know did that consistently because they're family and they're more than likely going to watch this video. So I'm not going to call them out. The tiny creature continued sucking its paw, shifting from foot to foot, its bushy tail curled up over the small back higher than the tips of its ears. Matthias stooped, speaking gently for fear of frightening the infant. "Hello there. My name's Matthias. What's yours?" The baby squirrel continued sucking on its paw. "Do your mummy and daddy know you're out?" It nodded its head. "Are you lost, little one?" It shook its head. "Do you often wander about like this at night?" It nodded. Matthias smiled disarmingly. He threw his paws up and wide. "I'm lost," he said. The paw sucking continued without comment. "I come from Redwall Abbey. Suck, suck, suck." "Do you know where that is?" The baby squirrel nodded. Matthias was overjoyed. "Oh, my little friend, please, could you show me the way?" he asked. It nodded. "Thank you very much." The tiny squirrel hopped and shuffled a short way into the woods. Turning to Matthias, it took its paw from its mouth and beckoned him to follow. He needed no second urging. Suck, suck, suck. "Well, at least," Matthias thought aloud, "if I lose sight of this fellow, I'll be able to hear him." The baby squirrel smiled and nodded and sucked on his little paws. Chapter 2. Abbott Mortimer sat in the grass of the Abbey cloisters. All around him the defenders had been set down from the wall, lay in slumber, not knowing when the rats were going to stop fighting, and realizing that they might not. The kindly Abbott advised those who had been relieved to try to get some sleep. Methuselah came shuffling up. With a sigh and a groan, he sat down on the grass alongside his Abbott, who greeted him courteously. "Good evening, brother Methuselah." The old gatehouse keeper adjusted his spectacles and sniffed the air. "And a good evening to you, Father Abbott. How goes the battle against the rats?" The Abbott folded his paws with his wide sleeves. "It goes well for us, old one, though how I can say that anything goes well which causes death and injury to living creatures is beyond me. We live in strange times, my friend." Methuselah grinned and wrinkled his nose. "But still, it goes well." "Indeed it does. Why do you smile, Methuselah? What secret are you keeping from me?" "Ah, Father Abbott, you read me like a book. I do have a secret, but trust me, all will be made known to you in the fullness of time." The Abbott shrugged. "No doubt it will, but please make it soon. We're not getting any younger, you and I." "Come now," said Methuselah. "Compared with me, you are still a mouse in your prime. Yet, like many others that think my senses are failing, you cannot see half the things that my old eyes observe." "How so?" inquired the Abbott. Methuselah touched a paw to his nose knowingly. "For instance, did you notice that there's a southerly breeze tonight?" "No, I don't suppose you did. Then look at the top of that old elm tree sticking up above the wall. Yes, that one over by the small door. Tell me what you see." The Abbot's eyes followed Methuselah's paw until he saw the tree in question. He studied it for a moment, then turned to the old mouse. "I see the top of an old elm tree growing out in the woods. But what is unusual about that?" Oh, goodness. There we go. That's better. Methuselah shook his head reprovingly. "He cannot see. Dear me, if the breeze is blowing from the south, then the elm tree would move its leaves and branches in a northerly direction, as it has always done. But that particular tree is choosing to disobey nature. It is swaying from east to west. This can mean only one thing. Somebody is using that tree for a purpose. At least that is what I think. Do you agree?" Without replying or showing any sign of alarm whatsoever, the Abbot arose. Walking calmly over to the gatehouse wall, he beckoned silently to Constance. The badger descended the steps. She held a whispered conference with the Abbot, nodding, in the direction of the elm. Less than a minute later, Constance, accompanied by Winifred the Otter, Ambrose Spike, and a few others, padded carefully along the top of the wall, taking great pains not to be seen. On the woodland side, Clooney whispered commands to his followers as they pushed the plank towards the wall from their perch in the elm tree. "Steady now, cheese thief, you moron! Keep your head up! Keep it going upwards, not down!" Cheese Thief struggled to obey. It was all right for the chief sticking back there giving out his orders. He didn't have to balance with one claw while pushing a silly plank about with the other. Cheese Thief slipped. With a squeak of dismay, he let go of the plank. It clattered against a branch. Fortunately, Scrag the Weasel was on the alert. He caught the end of the plank, steadying it. Cheese Thief regained his balance and clung miserably to his perch as Clooney hissed and raged at him. "Clown! Bugling buffoon! Get out of the way! Shift your fat idle carcass and let Scrag take over!" Burning with resentment, Cheese Thief was shoved unceremoniously aside. Clooney aimed to kick at him as the efficient Weasel took his place. "You just sit there and be still," Clooney snarled. "And try not to make enough noise to waken the entire abbey." Scrag moved with skill and economy, issuing quiet, confident directions to the others. "Up a bit, left a touch, take it forward, steady now, good, hold it." The long plank snaked out and upwards, coming to rest gently but firmly on the parapet edge. Scrag saluted Clooney. "Plank in position and ready, chief." Cheese Thief shot Scrag a venomous glance. Clooney climbed onto the plank and tested it. The improvised bridge wobbled and sprang a bit, but it held. Clooney turned to the raiding party. "I'll go first. We'd better have only one at a time on the plank. When I'm on the parapet, I'll steady the other end. Scrag, you come next. The rest of you follow." Clooney held onto the branches for as long as he could. Soon he was out in the middle of the plank with nothing to steady him. Trying hard not to glance downwards at the dizzying drop, he inched his way up the plank towards the wall. Clooney was almost in reach of his goal when Constance appeared on the parapet. She gave the plank a mighty kick, sending it off into space. With a shout of dismay, Clooney plunged earthward, snapping branches as he went. Winifred fired off a pebble from her sling, knocking a ferret clean out of his perch into empty space. Scrag still held one end of the plank. He leaned precariously out from the elm to see where Clooney fell. Seizing his opportunity for revenge, Cheese Thief shoved Scrag hard in the back. The Weasel dropped like a stone with the plank on top of him. Clooney's followers were kicking at each other and screaming as they tried to clamber down from the high elm branches. Leaning across the parapet, Constance and her friends watched the panic-stricken animals descending. Winifred the Otter managed to speed up the retreat with a few well-aimed stones from her sling. The defenders viewed their work with grim satisfaction. Ambrose Spike squinted short-sightedly down at the darkened woodland floor. He tried to assess the casualties. "How many did we get?" he inquired. "Hard to tell in this light," replied Winifred, "but I swear that was Clooney Constance tipped off the plank." The badger's brow creased. She shot a quizzical glance at the otter. "So you saw him too? I'm glad you did. I thought I was seeing double for a moment back there. How could Clooney be in two places at once? I'm sure I saw him standing in the meadow not 10 minutes ago." Winifred shrugged. "Well, let's hope that it was Clooney. Personally, I like to think that he's lying somewhere down there, dead as a doornail." Constance peered downwards. "Difficult to say, really. There seemed to be around half a dozen or so laid out there. Can't tell for sure. Too many shadow and darkness. Still, I don't think any creature could survive a fall from this height." "Maybe we better go and see," suggested Ambrose. The defenders looked towards Constance. "Maybe not," said the badger thoughtfully. "No, I don't think it. It suddenly strikes me that this could be a diversionary tactic to draw us away from the gatehouse wall. If it was Clooney who fell from the plank, all well and good. But if it wasn't, then he's still around the front. It won't serve any useful purpose counting dead bodies. Let's get back to the main action." Led by Constance, the defenders filed hurriedly off. Cheese Thief slunk cautiously out of the undergrowth. It was safe to move now. The woodlanders had gone from the parapet. Behind him, limping and complaining, came the survivors of the ill-fated raiding party. Cheese Thief ignored them as he moved among the bodies that had fallen from the high branches. 4 rats, a ferret, and 1 weasel. 3 of the rats in the ferret were dead. They lay where they had fallen, their limbs in grotesque positions. Their survivors immediately pounced upon the bodies of their fallen comrades, plundering weapons and objects of clothing that they had coveted. Cheese Thief stood riveted by the single eye. Clooney was alive. Beneath the plank, Scrag stirred and groaned. Amazingly, he too had survived. Cheese Thief sprang into action, surprised that Scrag still lived, but fatalistically accepting that nothing could kill Clooney. "Quick, get that plank over there, you lot! We've got to get the chief out of here!" Using the plank as an improvised stretcher, they carefully lifted Clooney onto it. The cheese thief knew Clooney was watching him. Tenderly, he lifted the dangling tail and arranged it gently along his leader. "Try not to move, Chief. Lie still. We'll soon get you back to camp." The stretcher bearers moved off slowly through the woods. Cheese Thief avoided Clooney's eye. An idea was taking form in his mind. He sniffed piteously, wiping an imaginary tear from his cheek. "Poor old Scrag. What a good weasel. I think he's still alive. Listen, you lot. Carry on and get the chief home safely. I'll double back and see if I can help Scrag." Cheese Thief sniggered to himself as the survivors disappeared into the night, carrying Clooney on the plank. Matthias followed the baby squirrel through bramble and bush. Whenever he tried to communicate, all that he received was a nod or a shake of the tiny creature's head. They had been traveling for quite a long time. As the pale fingers of dawn crept across the sky, Matthias was beginning to doubt that his companion knew the way. Then suddenly the little fellow pointed to the east with his paw. In the distance, Matthias could make out the shape of the abbey. "There's no place like home," he said thankfully. "What a splendid pathfinder you are, my friend." Still sucking his paw, the small squirrel smiled shyly. He took hold of Matthias's tail as they went forwards together, the mouse talking animatedly. The squirrel nodded vigorously. "I'll take you to Friar Hugo's kitchen and see what he gives you. The nicest breakfast you've ever had. Now, what do you say to that?" Nod, nod. When Matthias arrived at the wall, he felt like patting the old red stone. He turned to his companion. "This is where I live." A noise nearby caused the boat to freeze momentarily. It sounded like some creature groaning. Instinctively, Matthias and the squirrel ducked down among the ferns. Cautiously, they crept along in the direction of the sounds. Silently parting the ferns, they gazed in horror at the dreadful scene around the base of the elm tree. Among the dead animals that lay stretched in unnatural attitudes was a badly injured weasel. He was moaning and twitching fitfully. Before either of the friends could decide what to do, a rat appeared on the scene. They remained motionless. Cheese Thief was in a cheery mood. He hummed happily under his breath as he prodded Scrag with his foot. "Scrag, wake up, it's me, Cheese Thief." "Oh, come on now, I'm sure you remember me." "The stupid one, the rat whose job you were going to take." Scrag's eyes were barely open. He groaned in agony. "Oh." Cheese Thief cocked a mockingly sympathetic ear. "What's that? My old mate? Tired, are you? Yes, you must be lying there like that. Tell you what, I'll help you to go to sleep, shall I?" The rat placed his foot on the weasel's throat and began pressing down. Scrag struggled feebly, fighting for breath, unable to stop his tormentor. Cheese Thief took malicious pleasure in his revenge. Cruelly, he leaned his full weight upon the weasel's rasping throat. "Hush now. Go to sleep, Scrag. Dream of the command you never had." Scrag made one final gurgling whimper and lay still. Cheese Thief slunk off chuckling with satisfaction. Hidden in the ferns, Matthias and the baby squirrel held their breath in disbelief. They had seen murder committed. Matthias and the squirrel waited until they were sure the coast was clear. At last they emerged from the ferns, and Matthias cupped his paws around his mouth, ventured a low hollow up to the wall. There was no reply. The little squirrel shook his head. He pointed to the floor with his paw in a gesture that Matthias interpreted as, "Stop here." With breathtaking speed and skill, the tiny creature raced up the trunk of the old elm. Reaching the tiny branches above the parapet, he ran out along one. Using it as a springboard, he bounced nimbly onto the ramparts and vanished, sucking fiercely at his paw. Matthias had not long to wait until the small door in the wall nearby grated open on its rusty hinges, and Constance peered cautiously out. Seeing Matthias, she ran to greet him with the little squirrel perched upon her back. Matthias was not sure what sort of reception was in store for him. He need not have worried. Constance hugged him, patting his back and shook him by the paw. The badger forestalled the explanation that was upon the young mouse's lips. She beckoned Matthias inside, shutting the door behind them. You can tell us everything later, Matthias. Right now I insist that you come to the main gate. There's something you must see. A minute or two later, all three were standing at the gatehouse wall, shoulder to shoulder, with countless other defenders. Clooney's horde was retreating back down the road to their camp at St. Ninian's Church. There was a wild cheering from the ranks of the mice and the woodlanders. Clooney was being borne upon the plank in the midst of his army. Redtooth, who was still disguised in the warlord's battle armor, had draped a blanket over Clooney to hide him and keep up the masquerade. But nobody was fooled. Both sides of the wall had heard the tale of misadventure in all its gory detail. They knew that the strutting rat in armor was not Clooney the Scourge. Redtooth nevertheless strode proudly along. Clooney might not recover. Besides, he reveled in the respect that he received, dressed as he was in such barbaric finery. He knew that it was only borrowed plumage, but he could always hope that the position might become permanent. On top of the gatehouse ramparts, feelings ran high. The abbot had issued strict orders that no missiles of weaponry be discharged at the enemy in retreat. Amid the cheering, there was quite a bit of resentful grumbling. Why not smash Clooney's army once and for all? Now that they were on the run, this was the proper time to consolidate a resounding Redwall victory. But the good Father Abbot would not hear it. Like a true gentleman mouse, he believed in tempering triumph with mercy. The jubilatory sounds died away to an eerie silence as the rats toiled raggedly off down the road, raising a column of dust in the early dawn. Dispirited and battle-worn, carrying their fallen leader, the maimed and wounded hobbled painfully along at the rear, the bitter ashes of vanquishment and defeat mingling with the dust from their stumbling vanguard. Even the silent victors began to realize that victory came at a high price. Freshly dug graves and a crowded infirmary bore silent witness to the reality of war. War is not fun, children. It is not something to be celebrated. Does it happen? Yes. Is it sometimes necessary? Yes. But only to defend those who cannot defend themselves. War is not a game. Love and respect to those veterans, be they American veterans or elsewhere, those who have joined the military. War is not fun. Your sacrifice is noted, and I respect you. Just wanted to say that. Matthias felt a gentle paw intertwining with his own. It was cornflower. Relief showed in her eyes and her voice. Oh, Matthias, thank goodness you're back safe. It was dreadful, not knowing where you were or what had become of you. I thought you'd never come back. I'm like an old bad penny. I'll always come back, Matthias whispered. Oh, by the way, how's your father? Cornflower brightened up. He's made a marvelous recovery. He refused to lie in bed and has been up on the wall helping out. You can't keep a good field mouse down, my dad always says. Matthias barely had time to bid Cornflower a hasty goodbye before he was ushered off to the abbot's room for an early morning conference. He took a seat and looked around the table. There was Constance, Ambrose, Winifred, Formole, the abbot, and also his friend, the baby squirrel. He stood on a stool, dipping his paw into a bowl of milk and honey, sucking it with noisy enjoyment. I think that you would have been in trouble without Silent Sam here, Matthias, the abbot said. The young mouse nodded. I certainly would, Father Abbot. So that's his name, Silent Sam. Well, he certainly lives up to it. Indeed he does, replied the abbot. His mother and father are old friends of mine. They'll pick up his tracks and be along here later to collect him. Do you know this little chap hasn't spoken since he was born? I've tried every remedy known to Redwall on him, but none has worked. So he was named Silent Sam. But don't let that fool you. He knows Mossflower Wood like the back of his paw, don't you, Sam? The tiny squirrel licked his paw and smiled. He indicated a large circle with it, pointing at himself with his unsticky paw. Matthias reached over and shook the paw heartily. My thanks to you, Silent Sam. You are truly a great pathfinder. During the meeting, there was much useful information exchanged. Matthias told of the rescue at St. Ninian's and his encounter with the strange hare. "Surely you don't mean Basil's stag hare?" cried Constance. "Well, I never! Is that old eccentric still bobbing about? I expect you will see him turn up with the Vole family around about lunchtime. I never knew Basil to miss the chance of a free lunch back in the old days." The assembled creatures passed on a vote of thanks to Matthias for his resourcefulness and bravery. Matthias blushed. Then he sat listening intently while those who had taken part in the battle recounted all they could remember. But the aftermath of that memorable conflict, there was much speculation as to what the future held. Would Clooney recover from his injuries? Had his horde been so soundly defeated that they had learned their lesson? Or would they be back? It was the Abbot's opinion that Clooney and his rabble would not bother Redwall again. Their leader's injuries would undoubtedly prove fatal. This statement was strongly opposed by the others, and Constance was elected to speak for them. "Clooney is still the prime factor. That rat is physically tougher than we could ever imagine. It is only a matter of time until he recovers sufficiently to attack us again." Constance pounded upon the table with a heavy paw, emphasizing each word. "And make no mistake about it. Clooney the Scourge will attack Redwall again. I'd stake my life on it." Thinking for a moment, if Clooney were to give up the idea of conquering this abbey, he would lose both face and credibility with the army he commands. Furthermore, and most important of all, word would spread across the land that Clooney was not invincible, and that he would be beaten by mice. This would mean the end of Clooney as a legend of terror. So you see, when Clooney recovers, he will be virtually forced to mount a second assault upon Redwall. There was a somber silence around the table. The abbot arose. He arrived at a decision. "So be it. I have listened to your counsel and opinions, my dear and trusted friends. Although I yearn for peace, I feel that I must base my judgment on your words, which I know to be true. Therefore, my power as abbot and any assistance that I can give are yours for the asking. If it is my wish that Constance, Matthias, Winifred, Ambrose, and Formal take complete command at Redwall in the event of a second invasion, I will concern myself with aiding the injured and feeding the hungry. And now, my friends, I must adjourn this meeting, as I have other matters to attend to. Come, Sam, we must wash those sticky little paws before your parents arrive. Oh, and before I forget, Matthias, Brother Methuselah would like to talk with you. He is in Great Hall." Chapter 3. Clooney the Scourge lay upon his bed, racked with crippling pains. Rat captains gathered in the corner of the sick room. They sat silent. Their terrible injuries would have proven fatal to any other rat on earth, but not to Clooney. A broken arm, a broken leg, numerous cracked ribs, a fractured tail, smashed claws, and other hurts not yet diagnosed. Redtooth and 4 of the others might have set upon their leader and finished him off for good, but the fear of his legendary power was too strong. Nobody knew for sure the extent of Clooney's remorseless vitality. Watching him now, the barrel-like chest heaving up and down, the still strong tail swishing spasmodically, Redtooth marveled at Clooney's strength. He was not even sure if Clooney was shamming, pretending that his injuries were severe merely as some kind of test or trap that he had set for his captains. The 12 sentry rats were locked in the hut that had been set to guard. It was now prepared. They had been soundly flogged for letting the Vole family escape. As a further punishment for concocting lies about a big hare and a young mouse, Redtooth ordered that the 12 be starved until further notice. Falling. Below him waited spectral figures. Raggier with a blue face bloated to many times its normal size. A rat skeleton dressed in Clooney's own battle armor. A huge hare with enormous feet. And a thick-bodied, venomous-looking bandit snake. He tried to twist away from them as he fell, but however much he swerved and tried to change direction, Clooney had only to look down and see the fierce-eyed warrior mouse. Waiting, always waiting, the sword held point upwards for him to be impaled upon. Clooney tried to cry out, but not a sound came. It was as though his throat were being squeezed tightly. He felt the sharp sword pierce his chest. Bong! Once more the sound of the Joseph bell tolling out across the fields from Redwall wakened the warlord. Fangburn, who was trying to extract a piece of elm branch from his chief's chest, leapt backwards in fright as Clooney's eyes snapped open inches from his own. "Get away from me," Clooney rasped. Fangburn retreated, mumbling excuses. Clooney eyed him suspiciously. He didn't trust any of them. "If you really want to help, go and get hold of some of those new recruits who live locally, and bring them here to me," he gasped. Within minutes, Fangburn assembled a band of the recruits around Clooney's bed. "Where's Scrag the Weasel?" Clooney growled. Cheese Thief stepped forward, wiping imaginary tears from his face with the back of a filthy claw. "Don't you remember, Chief? He fell out of the big tree. After I had taken care of you, I went back for him, but when I got to him, the poor Weasel was dead. What a good, kind..." "Oh, shut your moaning face," said Clooney irritably. "If he's dead, then that's that. Here, you recruits, come closer and listen to me." Apprehensively, the little group shuffled forwards. Clooney raised himself slightly on one elbow. "Do any of you know where a healer can be found? I don't mean one like those mice. I need a creature that knows the old ways. A gypsy. One who can cure anything for the right price." Kilconey the ferret bowed elaborately. "Aha! 'Tis your lucky day, your honor, for don't I know the very vixen?" "Foxes?" echoed Clooney. "Aye, foxes, sir," the ferret replied. "Don't me old mother always used to say, there's nothing like a fox to fix? There's a whole tribe of 'em living across the meadow, sir. Old Seela the vixen is the girl you'll be wanting. Her and her son, Chicken Hound. They'll fix you up right as rain if there's something in it for them. Does your honor want me to fetch them?" Slowly, Clooney's tail wound itself about the ferret's neck, drawing him in close. "Get them," Clooney said hoarsely. "Find the foxes and bring them to me." Clooney's throat bulged as he tried nervously to swallow. "I will indeed, if you'll just let go of this poor old ferret snake, sir. I'll go as fast as if the devil himself was chasing me. You lay back now and rest your noble self." Clooney released the ferret and lay back with an agonized sigh. Now was the time to think and plan ahead. Next time would be different. "Red Tooth," he called, "take some soldiers and scout around. See if you can find a great hard timber, a big log or tree trunk, something that will serve as a battering ram." The mice may have won a battle, but Clooney had not yet lost the war. By the claws of thunder, those Abbey mice were going to pay with blood for what they had done to Clooney the Scourge. And that is where we will end for tonight. So, as I'm looking ahead... Okay, so part 2 is 23 chapters. And then part 3 is 15 chapters. So we're now in the middle, the meat, nitty-gritty part of the book. Thank you all so much for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe on the YouTube channel. There are links on my page. I will do my best to try to post one tonight. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you all next time. Bye, y'all.